אתם מלח הארץ, ואם תאבד למלח מליחותו, כיצד תוחזר לו? הן לא יצלח עוד לשום דבר, כי אם להשליחו החוצה להיות מרמס לרגלי הבריות. הואיל וידע את מחשבותיהם, אמר להם, כל ממלכה המפולגת בתוך עצמה סופה שהיא נחרבת, וכל עיר או בית המופלגים בתוך עצמם לא יחזיקו מעמד. כשבא ישוע אל סביבות קיסריה של פיליפוס, שאל את תלמידיו, מה אומרים האנשים על בן האדם? מי הוא? השיבו, יש אומרים יוחנן המטביל, אחרים אומרים אליהו, ואחרים ירמיהו או אחד מן הנביאים. שאל אותם, ואתם מה אומרים? מי אני? ענה שמעון קיפה ואמר, אתה המשיח, בן אלוהים חיים. אמר לו ישוע, אשריך שמעון בר יונה, כי לא בשר ודם גילה לך, אלא אבי שבשמיים. וגם אני אומר לך, כי אתה קיפה, ועל הצור הזה אבנה את קהילתי, ושערי שאול לא יגברו עליה. אתן לך את מפתחות מלכות השמיים, וכל מה שתאסור על הארץ יהיה אסור בשמיים, וכל מה שתתיר על הארץ יהיה מותר בשמיים. אז הזהיר את תלמידיו שלא יספרו לאיש כי הוא המשיח. הבשורה על פי התלמיד מתתיהו, פרק ה' פסוק י"ג. הבשורה על פי התלמיד מתתיהו, פרק י"ב פסוק כ"ה. הבשורה על פי התלמיד מתתיהו, פרק ט"ז פסוק י"ח. You are salt for the land, but if salt becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except being thrown out for people to trample upon. However, knowing what they were thinking, Yeshua said to them, every kingdom divided against itself will be ruined, and every city or household divided against itself will not survive. When Yeshua came into the territory around Caesarea Philippi, he asked his Talmidim, who are people saying the Son of Man is? They said, well, some say Yochanan the Immerser, others Eliyahu the prophet, still others Yirmiyahu or one of the prophets. But you, he said to them, who do you say I am? Shimon Kefa answered, you are the Mashiach, the Son of the living God. Shimon bar Yochanan, Yeshua said to him, how blessed you are, for no human being revealed this to you. No, it was my Father in heaven. I also tell you this, you are Kefa, which means rock, and on this rock I will build my community, and the gates of Sheol will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you prohibit on earth will be prohibited in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven. Then he warned the Talmidim not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. The Good News according to Matityahu 5:13, the Good News according to Matityahu 12:25, and the Good News according to Matityahu 16:18. שלום שלום, ברוכים הבאים. Peace be upon you and welcome to the third installment of Finding Higher Ground. your host, Gotti Hire. As usual, some quick thank yous. A big shout out to all the people at Anchor, powered by Spotify, for letting me use their podcast platform. You can find it located in the app marketplace of whatever phone you use. Also, a very big thank you at the people at Epidemic Sound for letting me use their amazing music. You can find them at epidemicsound.com. And bringing up the rear, but by no means any less important, Audacity. Thank you guys at Audacity for creating such amazing, free, professional-grade audio mixing software. Thank you so much. Without you, I could not do this podcast. Boy, oh boy, do I have a fun-filled episode 3 for you. Okay, so in this episode, I would like to tackle a certain subject that's been on my mind and my heart for a very long time. It is going to be church unification. Church unification. So, what does that actually mean? And in order for me to talk about church unification, I feel like it's necessary to define exactly what is the word church. What does that mean, church? And, of course, by saying unification, I'm implying that it's split, that it's not unified. And it's not unified, and we're going to talk about that. This is not a new thing. Church unification, the split in the church and church unification is actually an event that's been going on for thousands of years, believe it or not. There is an event that happened on July 16th of the year 1054 Christian era. It is known as the Great Schism. This event was what started the two largest denominations in Christianity, the Roman Catholic denomination and the Eastern Orthodox faiths. Pardon me. Now, this right here is just one of many examples of the split in the church, and I used it to give you to show you all you listeners out there how deeply split the church is, and it's not just the two main denominations of Christianity, Protestant or Roman Catholic. It's even more fragmented than that. Now, before I start talking about any of that, I want to reel it back and talk about what I narrated in the very beginning of this episode, which is the three passages from the Good News of Matthew. Matthew 5:13, you are the salt of the land, or you are the salt of the earth. Matthew 12:25, pertaining to a house divided against itself cannot stand. And Matthew 16:18 is, and upon this rock I shall build my church. Some renditions of the Bible say church. I have my rendition of my Bible, the Complete Jewish Bible, done by David H. Stern, and he uses the word community, and that's kind of sort of what I want to go into right now. I want to go into the definition of words. Definition of words. This is something that I'm going to be doing quite a bit in my podcasts and future podcasts. This is going to be an introduction of me breaking down languages, mostly Hebrew, sometimes a little Greek. We're going to look into the Greek, but I'm mostly Hebrew because it's what I'm fluid and fluent with. All right, so when we look at the scriptures, when we read the scriptures, the actual Bible itself, we see what we see is a scenario where we have two participants. We have God on one hand, and we have his people on the other. And the Bible, through a chain of events, describes the relationship between this character that proclaims himself as to be Yud He Vav He, In English letters it would be rendered as a YVH. No, I'm sorry, YHVH. But Yud Hey Vav Hey. Some people call it say Yahweh, and I, as an Israeli, was raised to say Yehovah. I'm not supposed to say that word, and we'll talk about that too. Um, but if I were to be heard by God-fearing, Torah-abiding Jews, I'd probably get stoned because I'm not supposed to say the word Yehovah. But I'll get into that too. But I digress. I apologize. So back to the actual heart of the matter. So when we look at the scriptures, we look at the Bible, we see a relationship between two characters or two entities. One entity, one character is God, Adonai Elohim. Yud Hey Vav Hey, Adonai Elohim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the God of the Bible, and then we see His people, and His people. That's what I'm going to kind of sort of pinpoint my focus on right now is who are God's people, okay? Now, if you answer me to that question, if your answer to that question to me would be God's people are the people of Israel, you would be correct. And we can see from the beginning, from the very, very beginning, Adonai Elohim makes man, he makes Adam, and then from Adam comes forth Adam's lineage, and from that come forth Cain and Abel, Cain veHevel, and through Cain veHevel we get to, well, it's actually just Cain. It's only Cain because Abel has been murdered, so there is no lineage from him, obviously. But through Cain's lineage, we get to Lemech, and then it goes into Genesis 5. It goes into all the genealogies of Adam from. Adam lived 130 years. He fathered a son like himself. Oh, Shet. So Shet, from the lineage of Shet comes all of these people all the way to Noah. Okay. And Noah is kind of critical here too, because Noah is the story of Noah's Ark is actually a depiction of it's like a foreshadowing of the first community, the first church, the first congregation. And I'm probably going to have to dedicate a whole entire podcast episode to Noah's Ark and how that reflects the congregation of God, pre-Israel. That's in a whole other topic, a whole other Bible study, and we'll touch on that later. But moving through Noah's Ark, at the end of the story of Noah, Noah has three sons, Shem, Ham, veYafet. Shem, Ham, veYafet, and from one of those sons, Shem, comes all the Semite tribes, which are the Arabs are Semites and the Jews are Semites. And so from Shem comes Abraham, and then Isaac and Jacob, and then from Jacob gets his name changed to Israel. So there's the first indicator of, where Israel comes from, and then Jacob/Israel's 12 children, which become the 12 tribes of Israel. So this is where it starts forming. The picture starts getting an actual shape. That through a certain lineage of people, God wanted a relationship with a certain group of people, a set apart nation that He made for Himself, to glorify Himself. And this group of people are the children of Israel that come from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And like I stated before, Jacob's name, for those of course who are in the know, and it's I don't want to assume anything, but for most of us here that have any kind of a biblical background, Jacob changes his name to Israel, and we can go into the definition of what is the word Israel means. That also could be a whole entire podcast dedicated to that. But I'll just touch on it lightly. The word Israel, Israel, it breaks down to two words, Israel, and common Christian teachings teach two possible explanations to where what this means. Israel. One explanation is wrestles with God. Isra wrestles. El God wrestles with God. And that comes from the whole event of Jacob wrestling with this person who is later it's later understood to be God, but as a Christophany. And I know I'm throwing all of these crazy terminologies at you, and you're like, "What's a Christophany?" We'll get to that too. I gotta make a little asterisk and a little mental post-it, and remind myself to explain what a Christophany is. As a matter of fact, I digress, and I'm supposed to be talking about church unification, and trust me, believe me, it will all come gel into one. And I'm sorry that I'm zipping across many smaller topics, but they all tie together. So Christophany, for those who do not know what a Christophany is, let's throw this into the mix. The second definition of Israel is prince with God or rules with God. Okay, so a Christophany is an appearance. A Christophany is an appearance or non-physical manifestation of Messiah. Traditionally, the term refers to visions of Messiah after his ascension, such as the bright light of the conversation of Paul, the apostle. Christophany definition: an appearance of Messiah after resurrection, especially as recorded in the Gospels. Okay, so I was taught that a Christophany is something else, but I'm going to do some homework now. Give me 1 second. Alright, so I found a definition of Christophany, and I'm actually happy with it. So Christophany comes from the two Greek words Christos, which means Christ, obviously Messiah, anointed one, and phaneru, which means to be revealed or to manifest. Therefore, a Christophany is a visible manifestation or appearance of Christ before his human incarnation. Oh, interesting, because I just read after. So this one says before. So I guess they're both right. But that was my point, is that a Christophany is a visible manifestation or appearance of Messiah before his human incarnation. So when Jacob / Israel wrestled with this character, this man was a Christophany. He was the Messiah before his human incarnation. Okay, let's go back now to God's people. Okay, which are, and again, if you say Israel, if God's people are Israel, then you are correct. So let's go into the definition of that. All right, so from a biblical standpoint, the people that uphold the covenants that were given by God to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then later down the road to Moses, and then in the book of Leviticus, you have 613 ordinances. Okay, and those 613 ordinances stem from the 10 Commandments. So that these 10 Commandments and the 613 ordinances were given to the children of Israel for as everlasting covenants to do these ordinances and these 10 Commandments. So in essence, what you have here is God's first congregation or community, of course, obviously, is the children of Israel. Later down the road, they get their name changed into Jews. Okay, and that's kind of important too, to learn the origins of where that word comes from. And if you were to say to me, well, Jews comes from the tribe of Judah, well, and again, I would say to you, yes, you're absolutely correct. But the word Jew in Hebrew, Yehudi, so Yehudi does come from the word Yehuda. But like I explained before, every word in Hebrew has root letters, three, sometimes four, but most of the time, 95% of the time, Hebrew words, verbs, actions have 3 root letters, and in this in the word Yehudi or Yehuda, it comes. I think actually this one specific example could be a good demonstration of how the root word could actually have 4 letters instead of 3 letters, because I'm trying to figure out the root letter of the word. Well, it actually comes from Hodaya. The word Yehudi, or Yehudi, Jew, or Yehuda, the tribe of Judah, or the son of Jacob, Yehuda, comes from the word Hodaya, to give thanks, to give praise. It would be Hey, Daled, Yud Hey, or Vav Hey. I'm not entirely sure. I have to do the research. Hold on, give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Alright, so the Hebrew name for Judah, Yehuda, literally thanksgiving or praise, is the noun form of the root YD, as in door, H, or in Hebrew, Yud Daled Hey, to thank or to praise. Okay? So in essence, to be a Jew is anyone who is in a constant, perpetual state of giving thanks to Adonai. Okay? That's acceptable, according to what I just read from the almighty internet that knows everything. Okay? Well, in this instance, I will go with it. It's legit. So, Yud Daled Hey Yada, to thank, to praise. Okay, so Yehudi. A Yehudi, a Jew, is a person who gives thanks and perpetually, all the time, gives thanks and praise to his God, Adonai Elohim. Alright, let's remember that. It's important to keep that in mind, because when Yeshua was here, when Messiah Yeshua was here, 99% of all of his sermons and teachings happened in front of the group of people we come to know as the Jews, HaYehudim. Okay? Now, let's go to the word community. Let's go back to that. Matthew 16:18. Matthew 16:18. And upon this rock I shall build my, well, depending on the version of the Bible that you read, it could say church, it could say congregation, and it could say community. And I guess in certain aspects they're all kind of sort of correct. However, upon my research, I have found a discovery, and I actually validated my discovery by doing some online research. And the discovery is that, and this is going to be a little shocking, and initially I thought that I was going to cause a massive upset by saying this, but apparently I'm not the first. I shouldn't have such a big ego to think that I'm the first person to think this. But apparently, non-believers and believers and anyone listening to this podcast, the Greek translation of the New Testament Gospels is not entirely accurate. Believe it or not, I know it's shocking. Oh my gosh. What do you mean? What do you mean? And if you do your homework yourself, don't take my word for it. Never ever take my word for anything that I tell you here, that you listen from me here, from my mouth. Always do your own research. I am going to give you the best facts that I can find myself, and I'm not an expert. I've stressed this before. I'm not an expert, so do your own research and search this out yourself. Okay? Yes. So I'll say it again. The Greek translation, the Greek translation that we have of the Gospels is not entirely accurate. All right? Why do I know? How do I know this? Why do I know this? Based upon certain research that I have done, this is the conclusion that I've come to, and to validate myself, apparently this is true. The Greek's not the greatest translation. Plus which, another thing that is kind of important to state is that Messiah Yeshua himself, like I said earlier, when he was here in his ministry, he was talking predominantly to Jews. And it would make absolutely no sense at all for Messiah Yeshua to talk to Jews in Greek. So the events actually happened in Hebrew and Aramaic, more Aramaic than Hebrew, because Hebrew was actually used for Bet HaMikdash, Bet HaKnesset, the temple and the synagogues, and studying Torah and God and all of this fun stuff. So Aramaic was used as every day, and Hebrew was used in the synagogue. It was considered Sfat HaKodesh, the holy tongue, the holy language. So not to defile it, it wasn't used in commonplace in everyday life. So the events of the events of Messiah Yeshua's ministry actually occurred in Hebrew and Aramaic, and then later down they were penned down to my conviction, they were penned down into what's called the Pshita, the Peshaita, which is the Aramaic Gospel, the Aramaic Bible, which would make sense that would happen first, and then later it went into Greek. And then we're going to look at that too. We can analyze all the Greek and the Hebrew and why I think it's not the greatest translation. That will be probably a different podcast. But going back to the definition of church, okay? So let's talk about that because see, I'm not a huge fan of the word church, even though it does appear in the Greek. Okay, so in Hebrew, when Messiah Yeshua says, and upon this rock I shall build my congregation, he uses the word kehilati, kehila sheli, kehilati, my congregation, my community. In the Greek, it's actually written ekklesion, which means my church, but I think it actually should have been translated as ecclesiasma, meaning congregation. So because the events happening in Hebrew and Aramaic, or not in that order, of course, Aramaic and Hebrew, a lot more Aramaic than Hebrew, I'm convinced that the events occurred, were penned down first in Aramaic, and then translated into Greek. So we get the Pshita first, the Peshaita first, and then the Greek New Testament, the Greek Gospels come later. When we look at the Complete Jewish Bible by David H. Stern, we get the word community. He uses the word community for the word church. So I kind of like community and congregation a whole lot more than I like the word church. And the reason that Stern uses the word community, because again, Messiah Yeshua's reference to kehilati, the word how he uses the word kehilati as my congregation or my community. So upon studying all of this, I figured out that of course the Hebrew and the Aramaic presided Greek, and the events of the gospel occurred in Aramaic and in Hebrew, not in Greek. Possible discrepancy in between Hebrew and Greek translations. Greek might be wrong. So from Genesis all the way to Malachi or 2 Chronicles, whichever Bible you use, because there's the Complete Jewish Bible, which is modeled after the Jewish canon, and then you have every other Bible, which is modeled after the not Jewish canon, and the order of the books are different. There are missing books, so depending on which Bible you use, Complete Jewish Bible, the Jewish Bible, the Old Testament, the Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, the Torah, the scriptures, the prophets and the scriptures, the Complete Jewish Bible, the last book of the Old Testament is 2 Chronicles, where in the not Jewish canon, the last book in the Old Testament is Malachi. Take a look. If you don't believe me, look that up yourself, and you'll see that the canon is different. Canon meaning order of books. So up until the events of the entire Old Testament, you see a relationship developing between God and Israel, physical Israel, the children of Israel, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and he establishes a religion. It's a relationship. It's a set-apart relationship through works, and he establishes this system with the children of Israel, so that they would have an intimate relationship by abiding this Torah, these 613 statutes, and serving the Ohel Moed, which is the tent of the tabernacle, and we can get into that here in a minute. According to the Hebrew Bible, the tabernacle, also known as the tent of the congregation, there's that word again, tent of the congregation, Ohel Moed, was the portable earthly dwelling place of Yahweh used by the Israelites from the Exodus until the conquest of Canaan. And 1/6 of these 613 ordinances that come out of the book of Leviticus pertain to service of this certain tent of the tabernacle, which later becomes the temple in Jerusalem. And you're probably going right now, it's very possible that you're going, oh my gosh, you're going all over the place. What does this all have to do with the church? And it has to do with everything with the church. Just bear with me. I am laying down the foundations of what I'm really trying to say. And there's a lot. And this might actually trickle over into episode 4. It could be episode 3.2. I don't know, but it's very important for me to get this message across. So be patient and everything will make sense. So now we're going to bring salt into the mix. And why am I bringing salt into the mix? Because as I opened up this episode with Matthew 5:13, you are the salt of the land. Okay? I'll read it all over again so that we can understand what we're talking about. You are the salt for the land, but if salt becomes tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out for the people to be trampled upon. It's extraordinarily important to remember that when Yeshua was talking and saying these words, he was speaking to the Jewish people. His listeners were Jews, okay? Yehudim, of the tribe of Judah, of the covenant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of the covenant of Moses. The background, all of the background, everything that I just explained to you in the last 30 minutes, now comes over into what I'm talking about now. So Yeshua comes into the scene and he talks to the Jews, or his own people, about salt. Now, salt in biblical times is extraordinarily important. Salt was extraordinarily valuable. Leviticus 2:13, Numbers 18:19, and 2 Chronicles 13:5, we see that there is something called a covenant of salt. And you can research that on at your own leisure if you are interested, but salt is very important to God. It's always been important to God, apparently. Salt has a lot of weight. I don't want to go into too many tangents because I just don't want to bore you silly, but you can look up those verses, Leviticus 2:13, Numbers 18:19, 2 Chronicles 13:5, and mentions the covenant of salt, and you can research that yourself. Salt is also a symbol of friendship and loyalty. Salt adds flavor. Salt is a preservative. Salt is a valuable mineral, and also salt is a source of nourishment. To whom Yeshua was speaking to, who was Yeshua talking to when he said these things? He was talking to Jewish people. So if the Jewish people are the salt of the earth, if the Jewish people add flavor to the earth, preserve the earth, then what is the salt to the Jews? Here's the question. What is the thing that preserves the Jews? Another thing that salt does is make people thirsty. So what preserves the Jews? If the Jews are the salt of the earth, then what is the salt to the Jews? And the answer to that question is, if you're going to say God, then you would be correct, but how does God do it? And he does it through his Torah. He does it through the 10 commandments that he gave to Moses and the 613 mitzvot, the 613 do and don't do ordinances from the book of Leviticus. Now, what if Torah were to suddenly lose its saltiness? Meaning, remember what I said, that the Torah is the salt of the Jews. The Torah is the the preservative of the Jewish people. It makes the Jewish people thirsty. It adds flavor. It's a source of nourishment. Okay, but what would happen if the Torah would all of a sudden lose all of that? All right, now let's look at this important little event that happens between Messiah Yeshua and a woman at the well, a Samaritan woman at the well. It's in Yochanan 4:21-26. Let's go there for a moment. Yeshua said, "Lady, believe me, the time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You people don't know what you are worshiping. We worship what we do know, because salvation comes from the Jews. But the time is coming, indeed it's here now, when the true worshippers will worship the Father spiritually and truly, for these are the kind of people the Father wants worshiping Him. God is spirit, and worshippers must worship Him spiritually and truly." Okay, so Yeshua says this to the woman. Let's analyze this. This is extraordinarily important. It's very profound. He says, "Lady, believe me, the time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem." So what is he basically saying? He's basically announcing a whole new system. Everything's going to get shook up. He's saying that the Jews are no longer going to be able or have that option of worshiping the Father in Jerusalem. So he's indicating that something's going to happen to the temple, because that's where the Jews go to worship the Father, is the temple. The temple of God is the main hub of the Jewish people. So Yeshua is giving a hint and a clue to this woman at the well that something is going to happen, and that's going to go away. Now let's zip back to "You are the salt of the land." What if Torah were to suddenly lose its saltiness by something happening to it to render it null? Namely, losing the temple. The temple is going to go away because Yeshua knew that that was going to get ransacked and defiled, okay, and done away with. So Yeshua had the foreknowledge of the temple being done away with, thus rendering the 613 ordinances null. It's absolutely no good anymore, because if you have no tent of tabernacle, if you have no temple, then you cannot fulfill that part of the law. And we learn later that if you break one part of the law, you break all of the law. So if you don't have the temple, you can't fulfill the Torah. Then what happens? So what Messiah Yeshua is offering here is a picture of a future in which Messiah Yeshua knows beforehand that the Jews are about to lose their saltiness, because the written Torah is about to be negated, because there will no longer be any temple. So the Levitical system of the 613 ordinances is done away with. What could possibly come as a substitute or a replacement to the Levitical system? Mind you, there have been 1,600 years between Moses and Yeshua the Messiah. So this Levitical system has been in place for that duration. It's a very long time. Also, it's very important, it's extraordinarily important to put an emphasis on the fact that the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the spiritual leaders of Israel at the time of Yeshua, were also heavily relying on something called the oral Torah. As opposed to the written Torah, they come up with something called the oral Torah. And this is exactly what Yeshua the Messiah, who is actually God as a person, as a human being, he comes and he debates with the Pharisees and the Sadducees about this so-called oral Torah. And what the Pharisees have done, what the spiritual leaders of Israel have done at that time, is they took their own wisdom and their own understanding of the oral Torah, and they lifted it up and edified it to a point of holiness, to where it's equal or even supersedes the actual Word of God itself. And God was absolutely not okay with this, so he sends himself as Yeshua to debate the Pharisees and the Sadducees about the authority and the authenticity of their oral Torah, as opposed to the living Torah that was standing right in front of them, and debating all of these things. We're right about the 40-minute mark right here, and I don't want to draw this out longer than 45 minutes. So apparently there will be an episode 4 that will talk about, we're going to continue exactly from where we left off, and I'm going to continue to talk about salt and how this all ties into the unification of the church, and it will all make sense by the time I'm done. I will clarify everything, I'll smooth everything out, and go and do a recap so that you'll have a much clearer, better understanding of everything that I'm talking about. So, we will continue this in episode 4. It will be the same topic, church unification. Until then, peace be with you, peace be upon you. May Abba manifest himself in your life and show himself to you, that he does exist, that he loves you more than you can possibly imagine, and you can imagine quite a bit. And you will be hearing from me soon. Nishtamea, brachot b'shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Blessings in the name of Messiah Yeshua.